Take your time, Mark, no rush. Our 4 o'clock meeting of Transportation and Public Safety Subcommittee, we don't have to take roll. We don't have any business before us. We just have some presentations by the Commissioner Breach, and also our Secretary of Transportation. And Commissioner Birch, I apologize, I botch your name every time. So I don't care who wants to go first, whoever needs to be freed up in their schedule. It's up to you all. You're Jennifer. So thank you.
I'll draw the lucky star or straw.
We do.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm Stephen Bridge, Commissioner of Highways for the Virginia Department of Transportation, and I'm joined with me here today with Ms. Laura Farmer, the department's Chief Financial Officer. So a quick overview of what I'll be giving you today is overview of the department's budget highlights, the revenue update, and the impact of the federal legislation, estimated impact back to the department, what this means to VDOT, some budget bill items for consideration that were introduced by Governor Northam, and then just a quick overview of the major projects that the department has underway throughout the Commonwealth. So let me start with the federal and state revenue update. As you all know, the federal revenue or the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act was signed into law this past fall, November timeframe. And that is going to give the department an uplift of funding, predominantly in 2 areas. It's going to create new program areas that I'll talk a little bit more about, and then additional funding for those core programs the department has underway right now. And that includes our State of Good Repair, the District Grant Program, the High Priority Program, our Interstate program, as well as safety. And then I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about the significant state revenue uplift that's going to be part of the Governor Northam's proposal and those assumptions that were built into it. I will show you what that increased funding is, and it's across the major sources of funding. But I also want to say that there are 2 components that have not been included into what has been submitted into the introduced budget, one of which is the elimination or the one-time act of ending the accelerated sales tax payments for retailers. That's a one-time impact in the tune of $50 million. And then the impact of the food tax that is, or the grocery tax that's due to be eliminated. When that's fully implemented back to the program, we anticipate that to have a decrease to our revenue picture by about $130 million on an annual basis. Again, due to the timing of when the introduced bill was had and our submission, that is not reflected, or those 2 numbers are not reflected in the introduced budget. So let me give you a brief overview of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act and the additional uplift of funding that this is going to bring to the program. The base federal funding bill that we have through FAST Act attributes to about $1.1 billion in federal funding back to the department. What you see on this slide is the anticipated uplift that IIJA will create to us, broken down into these 5 categories. The first 4 rows that you see, the bridge rehabilitation, the resiliency, the carbon reduction, and electric vehicles, those represent the new program areas. The 5th line is those formula uplifts that we can see, as I said, back to SGR, District Grant, High Priority, Interstate, and our safety program. Looking at this, the uplift is in the tune of about $385 million starting in 2022 and going through the next 5 years through 2026 to be about $404 million by our estimates. About 30%, as you see here, will be dedicated to the bridge rehabilitation and replacement program that we have. I should note that we've been leaning forward in this subject area, recognizing the anticipation of this bill and the importance of our bridge program and that asset class, that we have leaned forward anticipating the $107 million, and we've programmed through the Commonwealth Transportation Board, leaning forward to get started with the first year of the allocation on bridge preservation projects. We have a plan that we're putting into place for the years 2 through 5 through the program that's going to go a little bit deeper into our reconstruction activities, but the first year is primarily focused on preservation activities. For the state revenue forecast, this table demonstrates the uplift to the program that we can anticipate. So you can see at the bottom about $550 million for the next 2 years, and then a slight reduction in 26 or 24. This is from the Department of Taxation's numbers that we were able to receive in December of 21. The table does reflect the elimination of the food tax as well as a one-time impact on sales tax payments. Out of this, you can see that the 2 major sources of funding for us are going to be the retail sales and use, and then the major vehicle sales or motor vehicle sales and use tax. Again, this is all uplift that we anticipate coming into the department's budget. So when we take the IIJA and the state revenues, what you can see is here is that what we anticipate for revenue over in the FY22 caboose bill and then the forward-looking biennial budget moving forward. Again, this table is going to include the IIJA and the state revenue updates already included in it as well, but what we need to do is back out the grocery tax and the sales tax needs to be reduced out of this line item. 2 other points to note, or 3 points. The highway construction program, you can see that the 3rd row down, you can see where the uplift is anticipated through IIJA and the state revenue. The majority of those funds will be allocated to the construction program. Another point that I do want to, there's an asterisk in here up under the special structures. You're going to see in the FY22 column up under request under House Bill 29, it's labeled out at $30 million for there. I think we had a fat finger entering the budget bill, and it should be reflected as $60 million into that column. And then finally, we've done something a little bit different with this year's budget, recognizing the number of regional authorities that have come on, Northern Virginia, Hampton Roads, and now Central Virginia. You'll see under the row, financial assistance to localities for ground transportation. In the FY22 2 columns, you'll see that it's roughly 1.2 billion, 1.3 billion respectively. And then when we come down to the transfer payments, those 2 columns are hyphenated. What we've done for the 23 and 24 forecast or the biennial budget has been removed out of VDOT's budget to really highlight the fact how much is going to the regions and not coming to the department's budget. What we saw in 22 is that it's inflated to represent those numbers, and I do think that it's a little misleading that those regional entities are standalone outside of it and they're passed through the department that shouldn't be reflected in the department's budget. So those are some of the reasons why you see a large increase or a decrease in the financial assistance line item and then a larger increase or starting those transfer payments in that bottom row. In any event, what you do see is that we're going from a grand total of about $8.8 billion to about $9.2 billion into transportation by fiscal year 24. So a couple bills or budget items for your consideration that have been presented into Governor Northam's budget proposals for fiscal year 22. As you know, we did experience a general fund surplus of a tune of about $116 million. And according to that, those monies can be used for transportation purposes. And this is just a quick breakdown of that $116 million. $30 million for the regional spaceport, $25.8 million for regional multi-use trails, which would include the Fall Line Trail, the Shenandoah Trail, and the Eastern Shore Trail. $20 million for air terminal interchange, which is part of the I-564 land lease agreements that we had with the Navy that date back for close to 20 years. This would begin to make us whole on that commitment and to be able to build an at-grade intersection to facilitate ingress and egress of military movements between the base and amongst the base. $20 million set aside for additional engineering work for I-64 Gap, which is between mile markers 200 out here at Bottoms Bridge heading east towards Williamsburg. And then $10 million for the restoration of the TPOF, Transportation Partnership Opportunity Funds. And we use part of that fund to be able to balance our program during the COVID scenario flexibility that the department was afforded back in 2020. And then finally, $10 million for wild habitat that has been impacted by the Hampton Roads set of projects. And then part of the biennial budget that you see for 22 through 24 that's introduced is $207 million, again, for construction supporting or support for planning, development, and construction of multi-use trails. And again, it's for those 3 trails that I identified in the upper portion. Fall Line Trail would represent an investment of about $85 million. Shenandoah, about $105 million, which includes some property that we would need to acquire from Norfolk Southern, and then the Eastern Shore Trail. Another notable aspect of the budget has to do with our revenue sharing program and the state share. Again, we were afforded a great deal of opportunity to keep Virginia's program moving during COVID, and we used flexibility that was granted by the General Assembly to be able to use our revenue sharing program to be able to help our construction program meet its obligations. Recognizing where we are today through the revised numbers or estimates that have come from the Department of Taxation, I think we can take another look at our revenue sharing program and seek to advance projects or monies that were dedicated in years 25 and 26 of our program and pull those forward into FY 22, 23, and 24. A number of localities have reached out to us associated with small secondary road paving projects. Those projects are ready to go this fiscal year, in fiscal year 22. But we do need the General Assembly to be able to give us the flexibility to be able to allocate more than $100 million a year to the revenue sharing program, and that's the footnote that you see at the bottom. So what this would do is the first row is what's already been granted by the General Assembly to be able to allocate more than $100 million to that. But by pulling our program forward from 25 and 26 and accelerating those projects that are ready to go that would have gone had we not had COVID, we're prepared to do so. So that second row is really making sure that our revenue sharing program is able to take care of those projects that were stalled in the process. And then the third row that you see is we get back into our normal cycle of $100 million a year being dedicated back to the revenue sharing program. So there are a couple notable items also in the budget language. First and foremost, the budget language requires the board to develop a plan for the allocation of the additional federal bridge funds that would be coming. What we did, well, I'd say that we're already moving forward in this capacity, looking at what we did in 2019 through our comprehensive review and the need to preserve our bridges rather than fully reconstruct them. It's less expensive to preserve an item rather than go down and reconstruct an element that doesn't need to be reconstructed or let it degrade to that point. We are already moving forward with this. We presented the plan, a proposed plan for the 5-year window to the Commonwealth Transportation Board in December, and the board did take action on the first year of the federal funds Now, 2 through 5 still needs to be reviewed by the Commonwealth Transportation Board before supplemental allocations are had. Local bridges are a component of, one, the federal bill. What the Federal Highway Administration requires is a 15% allocation to bridges off system. VDOT is proposing that we would allocate 25% of the IIJA bridge funds to local bridges. What we did see and what JLARC did indicate was that in some cases the bridges, and I'll get to the next part about our pavements being in local authorities, that they do need some additional assistance there, and that's why we're looking at a split 75% of the IIJA bridge funds going to VDOT system and the 25% going back to the locals. The board is also, in additional budget language, the board's required to develop a plan for electric vehicle charging and its infrastructure. This is an opportunity, again, then to partner with the private sector to be able to advance electric vehicle charging corridors. And then finally, with regard to the budget language, an item that came out of the JLARC study that was presented, I believe, back in late December or early January was that the JLARC review of VDOT's program as well as its funding. One of the items that was identified was the city street conditions appeared to be worse than the VDOT's system as a whole. And so one of the recommendations that came out of JLARC was to be able to identify, is there an opportunity to be able to provide state of good repair or take a look at our city street or county street maintenance program and identify if additional funds could be allocated to be able to raise that effort, raise the sufficiency of those pavements. I would envision doing a similar study for the local pavement program as what we did in 2019 through our comprehensive review to be able to help identify what would be a sustainable mechanism for city street payments to be able to raise them to a threshold level that is equivalent to something that would be sufficient and sustainable for our investment strategy. And this would, so VDOT is being directed through the budget language to assess the condition of those city streets, develop a formula to distribute those funds, and then look for opportunities for efficiency if there is some mechanism through what VDOT is doing right now. I don't know what that might look like at this point. It would be, I don't want to speculate at that, but it's looking at, we would end up having a look at, is there some efficiencies and partnerships that could be gained through what VDOT does, and then come back to the Commonwealth Transportation Board and identify any recommendations to change that distribution formula if need be. I will note that it's been done in the past, so I think we do have a good starting point for that, with the exception of the condition, identifying the true condition of the city street assets that are out there. And then finally, Mr. Chairman, this will conclude the presentation. I just wanted to give a quick overview of the major projects that we have throughout the Commonwealth. Certainly our program consists of close to 3,700 projects in our 6-year plan, so this is only a very small snapshot of what we have up and underway. Interstate 66 outside the Beltway is about a 23 mile improvement that is ongoing, that is due to be completed December 1, 2022. So we have about 10 months left on that, and I would like to say that we currently are on schedule for that. All eyes are to be able to bring that project in on schedule and on budget. Another big project that we have representing the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel Expansion Project, the $3.8 billion investment. This project also is on schedule and on budget. That is due to be completed the fall of 2025. Hampton Roads Express Lane Network. This is work that we've been working very closely with the Hampton Roads Transportation Accountability Commission and the region to be able to ensure that the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel project is successful. What this would do is expand the existing express lane network down in the Hampton Roads community to a total of 45 miles in each direction from Jefferson Avenue to Bowers Hill. And we're looking to phase this project in over the next 4 years. Again, we hope to have the vast majority of this project done from Jefferson to Bowers Hill and underway or finished and open to traffic to coincide with the opening of the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel, which means that that project will be delivered fall of 2025. The I-495 express lanes in Northern Virginia, this is a 2.5 mile extension of the existing express lanes northward to the American Legion Bridge. We did enter into a comprehensive agreement with Transurban to advance this project this summer, and we are looking to go to financial close hopefully in February of 2022. And we have issued a limited notice to proceed to Lane to be able to start the construction activities associated with this, but we should be in a commercial or a financial close situation fall or February next month if we get all the financing together. Lover's Leap is another exciting project. This will create the last segment from the port to I-77 to allow trucks all the way from the Port of Virginia to Interstate 77 unencumbered. We anticipate this project, this is about a $305 million project that we entered into contract with Branch Highways, and we hope to have this project completed by 2026. This is an exciting project for us in Southside Virginia. And then finally, Interstate 81 Corridor Improvement Program and Plan. This is a suite of 65 projects valued at close to $2.2 billion that has been accepted by the General Assembly, and we are actively in the process of advancing those projects. We hope to have the vast majority of those either completed or under contract by 2032 to be able to advance that and complete at least this first tranche of 65 projects. The ideal thing with the 81 Corridor Improvement Plan is that as we near the completion of this first tranche of projects, we would do a similar study along the remaining part of the corridor, identify the next set of projects to be able to help. Mr. Chairman, it's not a complete fix, but it's an improvement to the existing corridor. It is somewhat piecemealed, but we are going to take bites off that we can afford, but at least we have a sustainable funding stream for that corridor. So with that...
However, Mr. Commissioner, we are committed to fixing that, aren't we?
We are committed to fixing it, yes, sir.
Mr. Commissioner.
No, my only final comment was that while I've given you a snapshot of these projects, rest assured that all of our activities are focused on actively managing those projects so that we do bring them in on time and on budget and continue to have the track record that we do. Mr. Chairman, that concludes my comments to the committee this afternoon and available for questions.
Mr. Commissioner, if you would just, if anyone on the, you have a question, Mark? Sure. Delegate Sickles.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the extension, the 495 extension, a little controversial in Fairfax because they were worried about what Maryland would ultimately do. Could you give us, on the bridge, American Legion Bridge, can you give us an update on Maryland if they got their act together on this, and are we going to build these lanes to the same skinny bridge? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Delegate Sickles, I'd say that we're actively engaged in conversations with Maryland State Highway Administration and the Secretary to advance what's been termed as the bi-state agreement. We are down to 2 terms that we continue to negotiate with Maryland on that agreement to be able to advance that concept. Maryland 2 is actively in consultation with their design build, their concessionaire as well, and they continue to make progress. I think what I can tell you right now is that they continue leaning forward, and they have this year to be able to advance that project and bring that to a comprehensive agreement and financial close as well. Yes.
Delegate McQuinn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, Mr. Rich, thank you so much for the presentation. Are there any proposed plans that may be in the horizon for I-64, especially the stretch along, well, you know where the stretch is, New Kent County and whatnot. If there's ever a serious disaster down in the Virginia Beach area or that area and people have to get back, it's going to be somewhat of a, as my daughter would say, hot mess.
Mr. Chairman, Delegate McQuinn, the department is in receipt of a proposed or a letter indicating a willingness to submit an unsolicited proposal to the department to create a managed lane system from roughly mile marker 205, which is Bottoms Bridge, all the way to the opening section at 234 in Williamsburg. Recognizing that we've had a change of administration, I've signed a letter back to the proposed concessionaire asking them to respectfully hold development of that proposal until such time as the Secretary of Transportation and the new administration can be briefed on the particular intricacies of the project. We have leaned forward and have done some preliminary engineering to be able to identify the costs, both in a pay-go situation, in other words, pay as we would go scenario, or a managed lane concept, so that I feel very confident that when we do have the opportunity to sit down with the Secretary and the administration, we can look and have outreach with the stakeholders to identify which solution is the best, as well as a plan of finance to be able to advance that corridor. No one would like to see that corridor opened up more than I would every weekend trying to go back home to Virginia Beach. So I share with you our desire to be able to fix that section.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Delegate Hodges.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and welcome. Thank you for being with us today. That was great. I believe it's 25 structures are on it's a special structure, very, very costly, high maintenance, and a limited lifespan. And a couple of years ago, we created a special fund to start looking at those things, because it's going to catch up with us. And it could catch up with us quickly. I'm just wondering where we are on that, and where some of those structures are, and I guess their timelines possibly, because many of those could be very expensive and take a big chunk out of our budget.
Mr. Chairman, Delegate Hodges, you're absolutely right. 25 structures that make up the Special Structures Program of the agency. Last year, we started with $5 million into the program. Right now, this year, we're leaning forward with $60 million, and then next year, you'll see $80 million going into the program. Many of those structures, as you said, are very costly and need some proactive maintenance activities. We're leaning forward. I did not bring the list of those projects that have been programmed with that, but we are in the process of doing engineering work to construction activities or maintenance activities, some of which include a full year lead time to be able to manufacture some of those parts. You said it very well that some of those items can catch up with us very quickly. As I had indicated to the previous secretary and other committee members, that what keeps me up at night is trying to determine if I'm going to fail the Berkeley Bridge in the open position or the closed position. I'm going to either have to have an impact to 100,000 people a day that commute there, or I'm going to impact the maritime traffic for an extended period. Recognizing that many of these parts need a full year lead time to be able to manufacture, like a drive gear. That's a significant undertaking. So this program in itself allows us to be much more proactive in our maintenance strategy for those special structures that we have, some of which you may be referring to the Norris Bridge and identifying the opportunity to be able to advance that. We do have a 50-year program already put into place that's identifying which bridges and the funding mechanisms and working through that list. The Norris Bridge is one of them on that list to be able to advance and be replaced. So I'd be more than happy to talk to you about what the intricacies of that plan and where that bridge might fit into the program. Absolutely.
Anyone else have any questions? Okay. Mr. Commissioner, we thank you very kindly for being here with us. And are you planning to leave or are you going to stay?
I'm going to stay.
Okay. Chairman Knight wants to speak with you at some point. So,
I'll step out then.
well, I'll text him and let him know you're coming.
Okay.
So, or you'll be out. Okay.
Thank you.
And before we move to our next presenter, there's a special person in the audience that I need to recognize. Jen Deasy. Jen is our new Deputy Secretary of Transportation. So, Jen, if you don't mind, would you come up and introduce yourself to the committee, please?
Hi there. My name is Jen Deasy. I've joined today the Youngkin administration as Deputy Secretary of Transportation. I come from about a decade on Capitol Hill working primarily on transportation issues. Spent a year with the Northern Virginia Transportation Commission, so familiar with some of the issues from that region. So looking forward to working with you guys.
Thank you, Jen. We welcome you to the team. Appreciate you being here. Okay. Ms. Mitchell, please.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I am Jennifer Mitchell, Director of the Department of Rail and Public Transportation. I am joined here today by DJ Stadler. He is our Executive Director of the Virginia Passenger Rail Authority. I'm going to ask him to give you a few updates on some of our rail projects. But it is good to be here with you all today. I will speak with you about our budget request for the next biennium, an update on some of our rail projects, as well as an update on the IIJA funding for transit and rail as well. Let's see.
Thank you, Director Mitchell.
Great. So just an update on our overall budget, and this is, as you can see in the FY22, we have the $935 million as our total appropriations request, and that does drop somewhat in FY23 and FY24. That does not reflect the new revenue forecast that Commissioner Britch spoke about earlier. So a bit of an asterisk there as well related to timing changes. This is a summary of our various funding sources that are within our budget as well. And I do want to point out some new funds that have been included for the first time in our biennial budget with the I-395 concessionaire funds and I-66 outside the Beltway funds. These are actually pass-through funds from DRPT to some Northern Virginia jurisdictions for transit projects. This is the first time they've been included in our appropriations request, and so you'll see the partial impact of that when we talk about the increase in our funds for public transportation. Additionally, you'll see the Rail Enhancement Fund and Intercity Passenger Rail Operating and Capital Fund includes appropriations in FY22. These are older rail funds that have now been consolidated into the Commonwealth Rail Fund. They were included as appropriations in the FY22 budget request. However, those will be going away and will be shown up on the VPRA budget side as part of our Commonwealth Rail Funds as well. Again, back to our transit funding, I do want to just point out in our transit operating and capital assistance, the increase in the number that you would see between FY22 and FY24. In FY24, that does include those new toll revenues that I mentioned, as well as some additional shifts in funding that related to the WMATA share as well, due to a change in the formulas that were used to allocate some of the funds between those programs. In addition to that, our WMATA dedicated capital funds are appropriated $159 million. We are obligated to provide $154 million a year. This does provide us with a bit of a cushion should there be any changes in the revenue sources there. We're also maintaining our $50 million match to WMATA for PREA funds. This is matched to federal funds for the WMATA system that Virginia, DC, and Maryland are all required to provide. On the rail side as well, the top line there with our freight rail, passenger rail, and planning programs also does reflect the change that we have in moving funds in our appropriations from DRPT over to VPRA. But the funds there are the funds that would be utilized by DRPT for a number of our freight, passenger, and planning programs. In addition to that, we're maintaining our rail preservation program, which is for our short line railroads, and our rail industrial access program as well. As far as VPRA, we have about $145 million a year appropriated in our Commonwealth transportation funds. We have statewide priority transportation funds, as well as funds from the I-95 Fredericksburg extension concession payment as well, that will be utilized by the Passenger Rail Authority for some improvements in the 95 corridor, as well as some toll revenues too. So with that, I'm going to ask DJ to come up and speak with you a bit about the Virginia Passenger Rail Authority.
Thank you, Director Mitchell, and good afternoon, Chairman Austin and members of the committee. As Director Mitchell pointed out, I'm here just for a couple slides to talk about the VPRA. As you may recall, the VPRA was created by the 2020 General Assembly, and it is our job to promote passenger rail throughout the Commonwealth. We report directly to a 15-person board that is appointed by the governor, and we own the assets the right of way, and there have been a couple major deals that I'll talk about in a moment. What we don't do is we don't operate the trains. We partner with Amtrak and we work with VRE. They are the train operators. We just track the infrastructure and make sure that it's maintained and available for passenger. Always looking for opportunities to enhance passenger rail across the Commonwealth. This is a map of the Transforming Rail in Virginia project. As you can see, it goes from the upper right in Washington, D.C. The first deal that we entered into was with CSX to buy a portion of the RF&P right-of-way that goes from Washington, D.C. Down to Richmond and actually further down through Petersburg to the North Carolina line. That will allow us to add service not only between Richmond and D.C., offering capital to capital, but also to Newport News and to Norfolk. We also, as part of that deal, purchased the line from Doswell over to Clifton Forge, the old Buckingham branch, that we will use potentially for future passenger rail. The second deal that we signed was with Norfolk Southern, and in fact, we just came to agreement on that a couple weeks ago. That is for the Western Rail Initiative that will take us all the way out to the New River Valley you see in the bottom left. That will allow us to add a second trip to Roanoke and then also extend the Roanoke service all the way to New River Valley, 2 round trips, and then a 3rd round trip between the New River Valley and Roanoke. It's important to note that all of this is possible because of the Long Bridge, which is in Washington, D.C. It goes from Virginia over to D.C., and this is really the current bottleneck for all passenger travel between here and going northward to the northeast. Currently, there's a 2-track bridge that is to capacity. If you look on the bottom right of this picture, the left-hand chart, you can see north of the river, you've got 4 tracks going down to 2 on the bridge, and then it expands out to 3 tracks. Once this Long Bridge project is complete, you'll have 4 tracks north of the river going across 4 tracks, 2 separate bridges, the new bridge and the current bridge, and then it will stay 4 tracks. As you can see on the bottom of that picture, there's an actual 4th track that's being added in Alexandria. So it will clear up that bottleneck, allow 4 tracks to go all the way from DC, eventually all the way down to Richmond for the most part, Ashland notwithstanding. That bridge the planning's underway. We actually started the EIS in 2017 officially, partnering with the FRA, the FTA, the DC Department of Transportation. We're currently in preliminary engineering. We actually just got the 15% design that we're reviewing. We'll go into final design sometime in 2023. First shovel in the ground probably 2024, 2025, and we intend to have the bridge done by 2030. And now I'll turn it back to one of the most common questions we get is what will DRPT do? What will VPRA do? Jennifer Mitchell is going to talk about the difference in duties.
So with the creation of the Virginia Passenger Rail Authority, we have essentially transferred responsibilities for implementing the state's passenger rail program over to this new authority. However, DRPT will continue to maintain responsibilities for statewide rail planning, and that will again roll up into the decision-making purview of the Commonwealth Transportation Board. So as I like to describe it, the CTB will still set the plans and determine where rail should go, but the VPRA will be here to help implement that project when the time comes, and they'll be administering the funding directly from their share of the Commonwealth Transportation Fund. In addition to that, we'll continue to do our statewide rail plan, administer funding, and administer all of the same transit programs that we had before. One item I do want to point out to you, which is in a budget item for consideration that's very impactful for our department as well as the transit agencies across the state. We currently have a statewide bus procurement vehicle that DGS issues in coordination with DRPT. It allows all of the state transit agencies to be able to purchase vehicles off of this contract. The state has the ability to negotiate better rates because of higher volumes and more bargaining power. And so this is also an important way for agencies to streamline their purchasing responsibilities. Due to a issue in state law that was related to the licensure of bus manufacturers and dealers that would apply to this, we need to have a legislative fix that would exempt transit buses from this requirement as well. So that is something that is included as a budget amendment. Right now, our contracts have expired. None of our transit agencies have the ability to purchase buses off of this contract, which is really creating an issue because we have over 400 buses that need to be purchased across the state this year. And so this is something that we wanted to just raise for your consideration as it's in the budget. A little bit about our intercity bus program as well. This is a new program that we've really created in the last 5 years that's been tremendously successful for adding intercity bus services to areas of the state that are largely rural, that don't have those connections to some of the rail connections, and also to be able to connect people from parts of southwest Virginia, the south side as well, up to northern Virginia and to Washington, D.C. We have 2 new lines, including a line in Bristol that we just inaugurated earlier this year, as well as a new line extending from Danville north, and also a line connecting Martinsville through Richmond up to Washington, D.C. as well. We do have plans to continue adding potentially a 5th line next year, hopefully connecting communities on the eastern side of the state as well. We do have a few things that are happening on the innovation front. We received a grant from the Federal Transit Administration to put together what's called a microtransit pilot project. We're very interested in trying to figure out how we can support rural transit agencies in innovating and trying to take advantage of technologies that are out there, particularly for things like Uber and Lyft, that type of technology. Again, many of those things are widely available in urban areas, but not necessarily in some of our small rural agencies. So we have a partnership with Bay Transit Express, which is in the Gloucester area, and also METCO, which is part of our Mountain Empire in Western Virginia, near Wise. And we're working with them on these microtransit projects right now. Based on what we learn, we will be working with the Virginia Transportation Research Center to look at how these lessons learned can be applied statewide too. So I'd like to pivot now to talk a little bit about additional federal funding through the IIJA. Now, Commissioner Britch spoke quite a bit about the additional funding that they'll be seeing on the highway and bridge programs as well. With the Federal Transit Administration, much of the funding is based on a formula that goes to all of our urbanized areas, as well as funds that go to the small urban and rural parts of the state as well. In addition to that, there are increases in discretionary funds, which are funds that are competitive as well. So of the $91 million in new Federal Transit Administration funds, about $70 million of those are allocated by formula, and the remainder of it is discretionary, which again means we have to submit applications and compete for those funds. Under the Federal Railroad Administration, there is a total of $66 million in the next 5 years. All of those funds are discretionary and subject to competing for those as well. So a little bit first about the transit portion of this. The state will be receiving $1.6 billion in additional funding over the next 5 years That's a little bit different from the number you saw in Commissioner Britch's presentation, because this also includes about $640 million that's going directly from FTA through the formula to these transit systems. So the $492 million goes to Northern Virginia systems. That includes Virginia's portion of Metro as well. Then we also have funds by formula that go directly to Hampton Roads, Richmond, and Roanoke. DRPT does allocate the funds to our small urban transit systems and also our rural systems as well. On the rail funding as well, this is a breakdown of some of the programs here. Again, just to note that the biggest program that has received the most funding that we could be eligible to compete for is called our Federal State Partnership Program. Important to note that up to 2/3 of that will be going to the Northeast Corridor, or it will be reserved for applications to go up to the projects in the Northeast Corridor. A program called the CRISI program, I won't bore you with trying to spell out the acronym, is getting $1 billion a year, as well as a new program for grade crossing eliminations. So this is great news for Virginia. I think we're going to be very well positioned to compete for some of those funds. But again, they're not funds, unlike the highway funds and the transit funds, that will be coming to the Commonwealth directly through formulas. How this works is that the Federal Railroad Administration is going to have to put out notices of funding opportunity. We expect that they'll first put out those notices for the existing grant programs that they have, possibly as soon as summer of 2022, but there is not a firm timeline for this. I should note as well that it is still subject to federal appropriations. After that, we expect that they'll start to release those notices for the new high priority programs, such as the Federal State Partnership, and then possibly the newer low priority programs. This will probably happen over about a 12 to 18 month period. So just wanted to point that out. We will be submitting applications. We're already working with the Federal Railroad Administration on a federal funding strategy that we can present to them. But at the end of the day, these will be based on successful applications and selected by the U.S. Department of Transportation. So with that, that concludes my presentation, and I am available to take questions.
Thank you, Ms. Director Mitchell. We thank you very kindly. Are there any questions? Do y'all have any questions? McQuinn?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have one side. I just want to know how come so much money going to Northern Virginia?
It does look like a lot. But I will say it's actually the majority of that is WMATA, and it's there is a portion that's going to Virginia Railway Express, and yeah, exactly. But it actually the majority of it is related to WMATA.
Anyone have any questions? Okay. Thank you, Ms. Mitchell, Director Mitchell. We thank you very kindly. You're always very forthcoming and very informative with a lot of knowledge. And DJ, we thank him also. So thank you very kindly.
Thank you.
Appreciate your presentation today. Okay. I think we now have a presentation by ABC. Travis? I'm sorry. What did you?
Mr. Chairman, Travis Hill, Virginia ABC. Time check, it is 5 o'clock. So ABC is
Somewhere,
here.
Travis. It's not in this committee, I can tell you that, Travis.
It's 5 o'clock somewhere.
We're all
right here.
We're on Central Time, Travis. You're all right. You're good.
Today, I'm going to walk you all through our performance over the last year, as well as some of the challenges we're facing going forward. But I thought it'd be helpful to share a little bit about everything that we've been able to achieve. We've been an authority now for 4 years. Legislation was adopted in 2015. We had 3 years of preparation, and then have implemented in 2018. Since that time, I think we really have executed on transitioning the authority to behave more like a business, be more nimble and flexible, which has been tremendously impactful given the pandemic situation that we faced these last 2 years. So there, I've got some things that we've done. I think Virginia should be very proud of the ABC model that we've got. We've won Best Control State. We also have a nationally recognized enforcement bureau that we've been able to leverage with a number of different activities over the last few years. We've been able to build record profits and accommodate businesses during the pandemic. So I think it's something that we've been able to do a great deal with going forward. So some of the current stats that we've got, gross sales, 1.3 million, up 13.5%. That is the most in the history of Virginia ABC. Just one of the themes you'll hear throughout this presentation is the exceptional growth that we saw during the pandemic. Retail licenses were about flat. This was the first time we've seen a retraction in licenses in quite some time, which is kind of to be expected given the pandemic environment that we were in for licensees. But expenses also went up for us by a fair amount. A lot of that was COVID, whether it was cost of leave, cost of employees, cost of freight, personnel, projects as well coming in. So we did see increased expenses, but we were able to grow profits on that as well. And then we've got almost 5,000 employees currently working for Virginia ABC. So trying to encapsulate everything that we bring to the table. Obviously, this is the Money Committee, so we're going to talk a little bit about money. This is what we contribute to the general fund, over $600 million. This is something that if ABC wasn't contributing that profit, that if you had to find that revenue, it would be in additional taxes to the taxpayers of Virginia. So what we like to say is we benefit Virginians whether they consume our products or not through the revenues that we generate. There are proposals this year for privatization that did fail in 2011, was the last time that was put forward. And I think it failed predominantly because of the revenue question and having to backfill the revenues if the state was going to keep itself whole. We project that privatization would probably increase prices around 10%. That's what we saw in Washington State, which was the last control state that privatized and in that time frame around 2011, 2012. So there is a cost there. We think it's something that we do very well from the standpoint of responsibility and service to the customer, because we do focus on areas of the state that may be underserved otherwise because of their rural nature, and also making sure that folks get the products that they need as licensees. What I would say, since 2011, we have grown by over 150 stores, and our profits now sit $100 million above where they were in 2011. So some pretty impressive growth we've been able to achieve in the last decade. This is just a chart, functioning to show you the contributions that we made over the last 6 fiscal years. I think what's interesting about this chart is it also kind of shows the different categories and how they're growing, beer, wine, and spirits. Spirits is growing the fastest. It is grabbing the most market share growth-wise, but it also in 2020 and 2021 shows all of those categories grew, which is kind of that theme where we did see higher rates of purchases around all alcoholic beverages, but spirits certainly grew the fastest in that regard. So one of the things that we've done at Virginia ABC is invest in our infrastructure, which started with our information technology. We started that in 2015 with a number of systems, a financial management system, a point-of-sale system, which is the cash register and back office that uses to support our stores. Also, domain and network migration out of Vita. One of the things we're able to do as an authority is remain outside of procuring IT services from Vita. We are almost entirely outside of their services now and stood up our own systems. We've also replaced our warehouse, which I'll talk a little bit about, and are launching a new licensing system. So what that means is we have been able to reduce our technical debt or out-of-date systems from about 13 systems to 3 since we began this process. What that means is we're able to do business more efficiently, hopefully more online, engage with our customers more easily, but also make business processes easier for our employees. Now, the last 3 systems we have, HR, tax management, and e-commerce, are fairly complex systems, but we do have plans in place, and funding for HR and tax management and e-commerce is in the budget submission this year going forward. This is a representation of kind of the useful life of our systems. Those 3 red bars are the things that we've got on deck next to address. and we've got plenty of space out of the other systems represented by the green color for those systems to continue to operate and not have to make big investments in them again. We really have shifted to trying to keep systems modern as opposed to waiting until they fall out of a date and are difficult to support going forward. We are also moving to more cloud-based and SaaS systems, which are able to keep us more up to date as opposed to the older models. Shifting over to licensing and enforcement, our Bureau of Enforcement is a fully sworn and accredited law enforcement agency. We have 9 regions. We really have a philosophy of being a regulatory agency with law enforcement powers. We focus on the regulatory activity, interacting with our licensees and helping them serve their customers. As I said before, we've got over 20,000 retail licensees, and we do everything from on-site inspections, observations, as well as helping with license issuance. We also have our own hearings division, which is hearing just under about 400 cases annually going forward and collecting civil penalties from licensees who have violated ABC law. So I wanted to update you on 4 activities from an enforcement perspective. The first one is our new licensing system. We are combining 6 separate systems, some of them paper, some of them older technology applications, into a single system. That system went live on January 3rd. It is back office live right now, which means our folks are using it behind the scenes. We are rolling out educational materials for our licensees and hopefully going to engage with them in March or April and begin to open that up for folks to use on that side of the system. It has been a long time coming. We got funding for this in 2015. Part of that is the complexity of the system. Part of that is license reform that came through, and then, quite frankly, COVID also slowed us down as well. So the benefits that our customers should see is having their license information more accessible and having information at their fingertips to interact with us when they choose to interact with us. Our agents should be more efficient because they're going to have that same information accessible to them remotely. We're going to be able to track the progress of licenses and identify exactly where they are in what stage and who's responsible for taking that next action. So if it's sitting with us, we know it's sitting with us, how long it's been sitting with us, versus if we need something from the licensee, we know that that's waiting with the licensee, and so that licensee knows that as well. So trying to be clear on that communication as well. A big part of standing up this licensing system was the license reform effort that was passed in 2020. What we did was take about 160 licenses and shrink them down to 74. We tried to do that through streamlining the privileges. No one lost any privileges. What we did is kind of combine some things. A great example of where that made sense was on and off licensees had to get a separate delivery permit. Well, we thought it'd be best to combine that delivery permit so they didn't have to ask for that. It turns out we were kind of looking into the future because when COVID hit, on and off licensees were like, we need to deliver, but we don't have a delivery permit. We got to apply for a delivery permit. We were able to make some adjustments to our own interpretation of the regulations to allow that to happen earlier, but it's trying to ease business with us and making sure that they get all the privileges that we think they might need. They don't have to use them all, but they're accessible to them, and they don't have to come back to us later and ask for something in the future. So we passed that license reform in 2020. It is integrated into this new system. It does have license fees adjusted to make sure they support the system. What we saw is that fees weren't really based in the cost of issuing that license or the regulation that was going forward. And so we've been able to adjust that as well. So we have just rolled that out at the beginning of this year. So moving forward, we do expect to see ease of use with this system. Hopefully the reform will also make your lives a little bit easier. We have a marketplace license, which is addressing these one-off business models. You may have seen legislation in the past or even carried it for a constituent who had a specific business model that they wanted to be able to give away alcohol or sell alcohol, but there was no license that existed to do that. We have a marketplace license that we can review that and see if we can issue that license as opposed to creating a separate classification each time somebody has an idea such as that. Something else that enforcement's been doing is direct-to-consumer shipping. E-commerce is a huge part of business now. COVID has certainly accelerated that. Virginia is one of the top 10 direct-to-consumer states for wine, which means that enforcement needs to do more around making sure that we have licensed shippers, that they're paying the taxes as it is shipped in, and they are abiding by the rules that we have. So we have stood up a direct-to-consumer shipping initiative. We have gotten more shippers licensed and reduced the unlicensed transactions that have been taking place, but this is a constant effort for us because you see new shippers coming online all the time because of the ease with which it is to set up a website and sell something. So future efforts, we did get money in last year's budget to set up a direct-to-consumer unit. We're in the process of hiring those positions and focusing on the next steps in terms of working with common carriers and making sure that they know that they have licensed shippers shipping through them and examining how else people are shipping wine into the state, as well as other product spirits, which they shouldn't be doing at all, but we are chasing some of those cases, as well as beer and other alcoholic products. So it's something that we're going to continue to focus on because of the impact to our operations and also the revenues of the Commonwealth. Finally, public safety investigations are something that the Bureau conducts after there's been an act of violence that causes serious bodily injury. It is a very intensive process that we utilize. It's very time intensive for our personnel. However, it has a tremendous impact on communities when we're able to eliminate a license that is disrupting the community or possibly harming the surrounding population. And we've had 235 of those investigations and 68 suspensions as part of that. Shifting over to retail operations, the theme really is growing omni-channel fulfillment. It means fulfilling a customer's order wherever they want it. So it's in the store, but it could also be in other settings. A key to that is in our new distribution center. We had a groundbreaking in February of 2020, right at the start of the pandemic. And then we had a ribbon cutting in June of 2021. We did not lose time because of COVID. We were able to complete this facility on time and on budget. We partnered with DGS on project management. We used a turnkey solution for a procurement that was unique to Virginia ABC that enabled us to move more quickly to have that operation stood up. This facility is owned by the Commonwealth of Virginia. It used bonding in order to pay for the facility. So we did have some hitches in starting up. We started receiving product in April. We had to stop for about a month due to building inspection issues to make sure we were up to code. We restarted that receipt in late June, and then we went live in August. We also had some technology issues once we went into the building that slowed us down a little bit, and so we ended up having to run two facilities longer than we wanted to. So we ran Hermitage Road at the same time we were running this facility. Not the most efficient in the best of times, but then when you start dealing with supply chain issues, limited inventory, it became more challenging for us. So it was something that we had to work through and certainly impacted our operations going forward. So what we have now, though, is a facility that we're going to be able to operate in for at least the next 2 decades. We've grown the capacity of cases that we can ship. We've grown the capacity of storage that we have for the facility, how many trucks we can receive, how many trucks we can ship out. We do have the automated dispenser that enables us to ship our top 50 items, and we can expand our multiple case pick areas. It also enables ship to home, which is something that we're going to focus on with e-commerce, is being able to fulfill orders from home. The Hermitage Road facility is primarily empty. We do have bottle pick remaining, so that's your hardest area to move because it's 2 or 3 bottles of different things that we have to kind of put together and move over to the new facility. We do have a project stood up to finish moving or removing items from that building, and we do think we will close that facility for our use before the close of the fiscal year. In the current budget, there is a projection that we will sell that facility to VCU, and so that's what we're working toward right now. So that's a picture of the central office straight on with the distribution center to the right. And this is, I think, in Delegate Wyatt's district or very close to it over in Hanover. So come by whenever you'd like. And then that's a larger picture of the distribution center and the central office facility. So stores are still extremely important to us. That's where folks, by and large, get products from us. We are continuing to grow stores to 395. We opened 6 stores in fiscal year 21. I'll also say underway, we have stores planned for Powhatan, Norfolk, Hanover, and Independence. And we're also considering new locations in Roanoke, Jonesville, and Winchester. I think it's important to note those locations because it really runs the gamut from urban to rural areas, and that is part of our focus, is making sure that we're serving the entirety of Virginia and that we're not negatively impacting folks who might have to drive further in order to avail themselves of Virginia ABC services. Omni-channel fulfillment, we are looking at how we can fulfill an order not just with someone walking in and placing a bottle on a counter. COVID certainly accelerated that. We now have curbside pickup. We launched that in April of 2020. That enabled someone to order something online. We would bring it out to their vehicle, check their ID, and place it in the trunk as a touchless delivery. We then moved on to shipping, which is overnight shipping via our partner UPS, where someone can place an order online at a store. It can place it in a box and ship it through UPS. We've worked with UPS to make sure that they're checking ID, they're checking to make sure the person who's receiving the product is of age and not intoxicated. That's something that's extremely important to us to make sure that we're making those deliveries lawfully. Our most recent addition is on-demand delivery. We've rolled that out to a large portion of the state, 285 of our stores, and that's being fulfilled through DoorDash, and that is picking up from a store same day and delivering within a certain time window that the customer has designated in order to receive that product. Again, we have emphasis on ID checks and making sure those things are delivered lawfully. We have not strongly promoted these services except for curbside because we are trying to grow them and make sure that we're doing them properly, but we do think this is ultimately where the business is going. You will see legislation this year being carried by Delegate Bulova on cocktails to go, but it really is a larger bill than that. It has to do with licensing third-party delivery companies. ABC feels that is a very important component if we're going to do e-commerce in Virginia, whether it's Virginia ABC or any other ABC licensee, is making sure these third-party businesses are licensed and trained in how they're going to deliver alcohol to the customer. We've had fairly good feedback with on-demand delivery. Folks have noted that customer support could be better. That's something that we're focusing on in the e-commerce initiative. That's a budget decision brief, as well as product ordering and wanting to be able to order our entire catalog. Right now, it is focused on the store inventory. So if the store doesn't have that inventory, you can't order it. You have to order from a different store. Ultimately, we'd like to set up e-commerce so that you can order anything from our catalog, and then we can figure out how to fulfill it, whether it's in the store or shipped to you. So the profit forecast and what we're looking at going forward in the next biennium. What you can see in that bottom line with actual transfer, we have had some exceptional years of growth in 2020 and 2021 impacted by the pandemic. We are projecting that we will pull back from those numbers. Part of that is slower growth because you just aren't going to keep growing at 13% year over year. 13% is about 3 years worth of normal growth for Virginia ABC. However, we're also seeing some expenses coming in from the new projects that we were rolling out. That was something that we talked about in 2015 when we were investing in these projects, that they would add additional expense, but we expected that in the short term in order to grow our profits in the out years. And then investment in personnel. We are struggling, just like many other employers, to make sure that we're keeping qualified folks, that they're not moving to other jobs, and I have a slide to show you the impacts there. So we have, the story on this slide is we have transferred a tremendous amount of money in recent years. We will continue to transfer large amounts of money, but there will be a pullback that we forecast. For 22 and 23, we forecast growth just over 1%. Again, jumping that 13% growth just isn't going to be sustainable, so we do see ourselves pulling back a little bit. We do continue to see supply challenges and economic uncertainty as pushing against sales growth. Inflation is a very big concern, and I'll talk a little bit about that later in the slides. Licensee volume. Licensees are about 18% of our business. As I noted, we have fewer licensees this year than we did last year. Their purchases, while almost back to where they were pre-pandemic, still very uncertain with where their business is going to go with worker shortages and other challenges. So we're continuing to grow our stores. We've opened one store in FY22, project 3 or 4 more going there. I've talked about the licensees. Out of stocks, I'll talk about in future slides. And really, out of stocks are coming from the supplier side. They're coming from our own operational challenges. They're coming from trucking. You can't pinpoint any one place exactly, but it's all coming together to limit what our inventory is going to be. We have suppliers who are canceling promotions. They are delaying or allocating product that they're sending out. So they might send us product, but when they would normally send us 5 pallets, they're sending us 2 pallets. Those types of things will impact our sales and our ability to continue to grow sales. As far as COVID-19, we are seeing operational challenges there. We did start to reduce our hours today. We moved opening to noon, whereas we would usually open at 10. The reason we've done that is to be able to shorten the hours of work during the day so that we have more man hours available to cover that time. What we were seeing is that someone would test positive for COVID, they would have to quarantine. The people they worked with would have to quarantine. We'd close the store. We'd close the store unannounced. We may not be able to open the store because someone tested positive. They can't come in and open the store. It's very frustrating for customers to come in and say, well, the store's closed at 3:30 in the afternoon. Why is it closed? So we're hoping to be able to have more people available with reduced hours in order to accommodate that demand and just the churn that COVID is causing in our workforce. We're also seeing the folks who are healthy having to work more hours. That is a challenge when you have a part-time workforce. They are limited to 1,500 hours a year. That turns over in April. If we have a part-time employee who closed the store and then we ask them, hey, you weren't on the schedule tomorrow, but we need you to come in because other people are sick, we burn those part-time hours more quickly and then they become inaccessible to us at the end of the year. We do think we're going to continue to grow e-commerce, but inflation is something that is going to be a challenge. So in terms of sales to forecast, we are ahead right now, which I think is a good sign. In the first 6 months, the performance has continued to be strong, although not as strong as in 2020 in the spike of the pandemic. What I would note here is the months of March, April, and May of 21 were exceptionally high. That is unusual sales growth for us in those months. We don't know if we're going to be able to replicate that this coming year. That is an open question for us going forward. So this is a chart that kind of shows the same numbers. $19 million ahead in forecast, but this time last year we were $65 million ahead. So that gives you a sense of kind of the moderating growth. Product out of stocks and inflation, I think, are going to be the limiting factors. When I was looking at this slide, I kind of thought about one of the football games yesterday, the Rams, Tampa Bay, when the Rams went in. I think they were up 3 touchdowns at halftime. But I'm not comfortable. I'm up a couple touchdowns right now, but I'm not comfortable because there's certainly some were they up 4 touchdowns? Yeah. So I think there's plenty of opportunity to fumble here in the next 6 months. And so I want to moderate expectations on that growth, and I'll walk you through a few slides on this. Out of stocks, a big topic of conversation. The blue line shows a normal year. Blue line is 2019. So that's normally what you would see is out of stocks around that 50 item mark, growing in the holiday season because shopping just intensifies, and then it moderates back down. 2020 follows that path, right? It starts high and then it comes back down to about 50 by the 3rd or 4th month. That 3rd or 4th month in 2020 was the start of the pandemic, and you see what that did to out of stocks. It shot them through the roof, and we really haven't come back down. 2021, we did actually start to see a decline in out of stocks, but then it spiked at the end of the year, and you're seeing that start of the yellow line on the left as what we're seeing with out of stocks currently. So we're continuing to see out of stocks at a much higher than normal level for Virginia ABC. So what does that do to our retail in-stock position? It moves it into the negative territory. Right now, when we finished out the year around a little bit below 80% in stock across the retail fleet. Again, no single cause for that. It's receiving from suppliers, it's our own operations, it's trucks, it's workforce availability. All of those things go into impacting our inventory. It can have a cascading effect as well because consumers generally will trade into a different product. We carry, I think it's between 3,000 and 4,000 items. So generally people can trade from one to the other. But when they trade to one, that increases demand on that product. Our forecast doesn't account for that though. So now we're not fulfilling as quickly on those items. And so we're seeing that kind of a double whammy effect going forward.
Hey, Travis?
Yes, sir.
If you're going to keep going, I'm going to have a drink.
Here's the good news.
Summarize, Travis. Thank you.
Yeah, we're getting better. So here's our in-stock position over the last 3 weeks. You want to see higher bars on the left-hand side. So you can see those bars are getting higher on the left-hand side going forward. This is all out of stocks. When you take into account the warehouse out of stocks, so this is just us moving the product that we hold, you can again see all the lines are getting taller on the left-hand side. That's the good news as we continue to improve our operations. Employee turnover continues to be a challenge. It is growing at both the part-time and the full-time. We are taking actions around compensation to keep folks, but that's something that everyone is facing. These show the call-outs that we've had in recent days. The Omicron variant has certainly impacted our operations. This is why we reduced our hours in order to try to account for that strain on our workforce. So sales volatility is moderating. You can see that on the right-hand side. It is no longer as volatile, but it's also not as high. So that's another reason to keep in perspective just how much money we might be able to make this year based on decreasing demand going forward. One of the big things that drove our growth was premiumization. That is someone deciding to buy a more expensive bottle. That's the price mix side. So they come in and they're feeling pretty good. They got money in their pocket. Rather than buying the $25 bottle, they buy the $30. This is where inflation comes in. Consumers feel less optimistic about the economy right now. They are very concerned about inflation that came in at 7%. If you have a consumer that feels that way, they're going to come in. They normally buy the $25 bottle. They buy the $20 bottle. We are fairly inelastic in terms of people buying the product. They're going to walk out with a bottle. They're just not going to walk out with as expensive a bottle, and that hits revenues for us. Other additions to forecast, we have made adjustments to compensation as we can with an authority to make sure we remain competitive, both in the public safety sector with our enforcement personnel as well as our retail distribution and central office. We also see continued impacts from the ABC property when we sell that this year. Additional expenses, this gets into some of our budget decision briefs. Store growth, we are growing stores, which means we need more personnel. The stores themselves are growing greater sales, which means we need more personnel for that. So that takes us to the Gaker forecast, where we have our transfers for 22 at 215, then 190 in 23 and 193 in 24. Quickly on the budget items, e-commerce implementation, I think I walked you all through that. In terms of the investment, we do see that as additive. We think it's going to produce $42 million in net margin after investment in order to grow those sales. We don't think this will deprive from stores. We think it is going to be additive to our sales, and that just lays out the cost metrics. We are asking for body-worn cameras for our enforcement personnel. That is implementing what's become a best practice in the enforcement community, and it's something that we will look to do for our personnel. I talked about store growth. Here, not just store positions, but also the support positions. We added 36 stores and over 1,000 retail employees without adding another HR support person, without adding another maintenance person to support that store. We need to catch up on that so we can maintain the look of our stores and maintain hiring for our personnel. We are looking to convert store clerks to full-time, 25 in each year of the biennium. Gives us a more stable workforce. These are folks that can work without that 1,500-hour limitation. It gives them an opportunity to grow in the business and have a career at Virginia ABC. There's the question.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Travis.
Yes, sir.
I think Delegate Krzyk may have a question. He's been waiting patiently. Paul?
I got a question and a comment. I just, as the former ABC chair in general laws, I got to got to see up front and personal all the hard work that Travis and his team do. I've been over to that new warehouse. I recommend you all do go and visit. It's impressive and it's big. And I hope it's going to last more than 2 decades. It should be good for 3 or 4. I saw 20 years. That's not long enough. But what I do want to say is, if you could go back to slide 17, I had a budget amendment during the I think it was during the 21 session, and what we were doing was, and you mentioned it there, with the 4 auditors, the 3 non-sworn compliance agents, 2 special agents, and 1 licensed technician. And you said that it still hasn't been filled yet. Is that the situation with that? And that's for increasing enforcement efforts relating to the direct shipment of alcohol into Virginia.
Correct. That money became available in July of this year.
Yeah.
We are hiring and I haven't got an update in a week or 2, but I think we are hiring the head of that unit, and then we will begin to focus on the mix of non-sworn and sworn personnel in order to support that unit. But that is our goal going forward. So we haven't stopped doing that, haven't stopped with direct-to-consumer enforcement, while we've also been standing up this new unit as well.
All right.
That is something that we're continuing to do, though.
Paul, you satisfied?
Well, I'm going to keep a keen eye on that, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Thank you, Dale.
We'll be coming back to that question later on,
Well,
later in the session.
You can always reach out to Travis if you
Yeah,
need to.
no, and I appreciate that.
So, thank you, Travis.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Yep.
Chairman.
Any other questions from the committee? No. Travis, we thank you for what you do. I remember sitting in a committee about 3 or 4 years ago, and you were just elated about the fact that you were going to gross $1 billion. And now you've far exceeded that. So kudos to you, my friend.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for what you do.
Thank you for your support.
Well-run operation. Thank you, Captain.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Any more business to come before the committee? The committee operates by motion. We have a motion to adjourn, second? Second. Shall rise. Thank you.